Thank you so much for that, Father Backett, for that great primer and presentation. I have the pleasure of introducing our first panel that will follow that great presentation. The subject that we'll be discussing is the benefits and perils of AI for the church. This panel will explore how the Catholic Church can harness the power of AI to advance the mission while carefully navigating its potential risks. Our esteemed panelists here will discuss how AI can support theological research, pastoral care, evangelization, as well as the ethical challenges AI poses on human dignity, privacy, and spiritual integrity. The discussion will highlight the Church's responsibility to lead in shaping a moral and ethical AI future. The panelists here are represented of different vocations in this discussion about the AI challenges and opportunities. So with that, I'd like to introduce our panelists, Father Eric Salobir, the chairman of the Executive Committee for the Human Technology Foundation in Paris. Alexis Haughey, founder and board member of the Catholic Institute of Technology in Castel Gandolfo. Daniel Schreck, chair of theology at Ave Maria University. And Taylor Black from Microsoft with its Incubation Studio and Strategic Programs team. So with that, I'd like to maybe start this discussion with our panelists. I'm going to direct maybe a discussion to some individuals, but would love if the panelist feels free to chime in to follow the thread and expand upon this. What I'm really excited about this fora here is the participants are really representative of both the Church's clergy and laity. And this is a really great representation of our hope, our courage, our dedication to reconcile the Church's Christian commitments and devotion with the temporal realities. And as one that talks about the challenges of artificial intelligence, that reconciliation is very important. Furthermore, I'm really excited about this venue, one that represents a reconciliation of faith and reason. And we talk about in John Paul II's Fideat Ratio talks about this marriage of faith and reason as an important reconciliation towards the common pursuit towards truth. And Father Backett, you talked about even the challenges navigating artificial intelligence, its imperfections around deception. And in a world in pursuit of truth, what are those navigations? What's the role of the Church in leaning towards that? So I'm quite interested in learning from our panelists the role of the Church in this. Maybe I want to start with Alexis. I know this is really a core foundation for Catholic tech, this reconciliation of faith and reason, and would love to get your thoughts of the Church's role in that marriage of faith and reason, the formation of future generations, and hopefully the formation of technology that can be reflective of the virtues and the values of humanity. So maybe I'll start that question to you, Alexis.
Okay, there we go. Thank you very much, Kyle. I appreciate the question. So Catholic Tech is very focused on a couple of specific things that we would like to do to answer these questions, both from a philosophical perspective, as well as from a more practical perspective in the world. So we say kind of that the three pillars of what we do are educating scientists and engineers to have ethical practices so that they can go out into industry or into research and into the world with the ethical foundations that they need to be leaders in their fields and also to be peers to the people who they're speaking to. It's very difficult sometimes for people who don't have any kind of technical background to be thought as speaking authoritatively on any of these issues. Even if you know the philosophy and theology and ethics of it better than anyone else, if you don't know what a neural network and reinforcement learning is, the artificial intelligence people won't take you super seriously. So we train our scientists and engineers in that way. We also have faculty in the philosophy and theology department and the ethics department who work very specifically on these issues at the intersection of faith and science. So I think there's a lot of work to be done within the Church itself on thinking through these questions sooner rather than later as emerging technologies come out. And then finally, we want to be able to kind of follow cutting edge research as it is being developed. We have a fantastic committee at Catholic Tech called our Research Ethics Committee. I believe it's the first of its kind. So before any of our scientific or engineering researchers submit a proposal for a federal or other grants, it has to go through a rigorous review from philosophers, theologians, and ethicists working in that field. And in most cases, it's very rarely a yes-no decision, because it's often not the case most of the time that technologies are either inherently evil and we should stay away from them completely, or they are inherently good and we have nothing to be concerned about. So what this ethics committee does is they look at an emerging technology, they talk to the professor to get to know more about the technology, and then they write an assessment about what the potential pits and pitfalls are for that particular technology, so that we can continue to accompany the researcher and all of the other people doing the work along that process to make sure they have the spiritual and philosophical understanding they need to be good stewards of the technology.
Would any of our panelists like to expand upon that thread? I'm inclined to maybe call on Father Eric, who's obviously bridging a world of faith and reason, technologists, and a lot of these humanistic questions.
Thank you very much, Kyle. Actually, I can try to build on that because I fully agree, but I would say I'm not so much focused on the use of this kind of technologies within the church, because there are already here in this room a lot of people doing that. And in our recent history of the Catholic Church, we've seen that speaking about newspapers, radio, television, I mean, always, and even the web, we managed that pretty well to use that for evangelization. My concern is more about the faithful and the others in their full life. And you, Father Michael, you're mentioning healthcare, you're mentioning, I mean, there are other topics like the future of work and so on. And I would say that my question listening to you was what it is to be a leader for the church. I mean, we used to have all the capabilities within the church, like forefront scientists, famous artists, and so on. Currently, let's be honest, most of those capabilities are clearly outside of the church, facing the church and time to time against the church. So we need to find a way not only to track them to us, but also to engage with them and to go to them. And this is something we try to do since more than a decade here in the Vatican. With Cardinal Peter Turkson, we've started a group gathering people from the Silicon Valley, but only the CEOs. And we've met the Holy Father several times to try to engage on those topics. But I think that we need to consider that we're in a new paradigm where we need to go and address, and what's happening is not within us or in our institutions. I mean, I'm the only one here who's dressed in a way which was fashionable in the 13th century. But I'm the one telling that we need to go out. Currently, for example, we're preparing the AI Action Summit, which will take place in Paris after the one in the UK, and that's the place, as well as the UN or OECD, where things are happening. I mean, our future is partly shaped there because the rules are made there and all the leaders are there. I mean, private and public sector, chiefs of states, and that's where things are happening. And we need to be there and we need to engage with those people. And Father Michael, you were mentioning St. John Paul II, and actually I'm a big fan. But for me, his most powerful statement were the few words he pronounced in the very beginning of his pontificate: don't be afraid. And so I think we have not to be afraid to go out and to engage with the people where they are, knowing that probably they will start from very far from us, and we need to create this kind of dialogue. But in this dialogue, to my mind, we have a lot to provide about anthropology. I mean, the so-called transhumanism. Sorry, there's no anthropology behind. So we have a lot to provide, and also ethics. We've done a lot of work with medical and biomedical ethics, and we can provide that too in this conversation. So I'm really confident in the way the church can help, and the voice of the church is listened by the tech community. I remember last time we've met the Holy Father with CEOs from the Valley. He told us something really interesting. He said, do not create a new Babel Tower with one language, which could be English, and one culture, which could be Hollywood. And I think it's pretty powerful. So, and actually they were shocked, but they were interested in that, and they received the message. So I think we can pass this kind of message. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And maybe I would like to direct the next follow-up question on that thread to you, Taylor. I apologize, I don't know much about your personal spiritual formation. So I look at you maybe as a technical, for your expertise of your technical métier, being at Microsoft and running its incubation studio. But from your perspective, at least from your work in incubation, strategic development, what's your perspective on some of the words that were said in terms of the church, the role of the church, the role of faith and religion in the technical design? Again, ultimately hoping that technology reflects human virtue and the values of humanity.
So I'm in the CTO's office at Microsoft, and so I have to say AI at least once a conversation, or else I get fired. But my background, I'm a Byzantine Catholic in diaconal formation, actually. So I've spent some time thinking about these sorts of questions. I think that the world really looks to the Catholic Church for an understanding of what a person is. I don't think very many people in tech think of persons in a holistic sort of way, because we think that a whole bunch of things about what makes a person are outside of the purview of tech, whether that's correct or incorrect. So I think the church really has a fantastic opportunity here, where people have been coming to the church since the Enlightenment as to what makes a human, what makes a person. And that question is now here with a renewed focus, right? We've been approaching it in the past decades from perhaps a physical standpoint, but now the question is very much in the inside of our head. I'm reminded that Aquinas' only natural analog for the Trinity was in how our own cognitional operations work. So there's a lot there, I think, that only the church really talks about and has a perspective on. So I'm excited, in fact, for the way in which tech has to come to the only place where the person is really understood, and where we have paths to further understand the human person. Because otherwise, tech looks at it in a very bifurcated sort of way. How does it work for a user experience on a particular interface? Even with our, honestly, best in class kind of responsible AI practices at Microsoft, even there, we don't have that complete holistic view, because we don't think of human persons in a complete holistic way. We've bifurcated it out into special disciplines, into certain kinds of user groups, into certain user stories and feedback loops, as Techne often does, right? But here is where we can really apply a lot of thought and knowledge to it.
Daniel, I know that you're the last one maybe to respond, but Taylor mentions a very interesting point, which is, I mean, for the longest time of technology and the innovation development, the moral and ethical dimensions have always sat ancillary to its technical principles. It's always been the case. Let's iterate, let's build, and we'll worry about the ethical, humanistic dimensions later. And we're starting to realize the rapid pace of an advancement of technology, that ethical and moral dimension is now needed the most, even at its genesis and at the center of its design, its development and use. Daniel, I know that you're at Ave Maria University, and again, talking about the role that faith has reconciled with reason to form technology that represents these humanity's virtues. We'd love to maybe get your take on how does the church continue to lean in to provide that that guidance and ensure that technology is integral with these aspects of humanity.
I couldn't agree more with the last comments and also with Monsignor's opening comments. I think we live in an era of the incarnate versus the disincarnate. And the issue with AI is that it creates kind of a false artificial soul. You know, clearly now AI has the capability of at least being an analog for human intelligence. But as Jeffrey Hinton has warned, he just won the Nobel Prize, so he has more credibility than I do, and he's a little more bearish than I might be, but he won the Pulitzer Prize, you know, or the Nobel Prize. And his point was, we're probably not too far away from AI having some kind of will or some kind of memory. And you see this with Tesla. I own a Tesla. It can even navigate the natural world. And I think Father had a really good point about this when you have robotics. So all of these things are happening. And I might add at the same time, what's happening with AI is also mass confusion about the meaning, purpose, and destiny of the human person. You see this in gender dysphoria, gender confusion. You see it in buttressing institutions like the government, universities, the church, family, that are, I think, presenting the human person with mass confusion. And this is where churches, and I think universities in particular, need to reorient tech and science to the dignity of the human person, not the other way around. When it comes to the neutrality of technology, you know, it is true, at least Thomas would probably say in the Summa, that in fact technology is kind of neutral in some regard. But if you look at the development of napalm or the atomic bomb, it certainly wasn't neutral. It was made to kill innocent human life. And the interesting thing with AI or the smartphone too, is it's a tool which comes out of the human psyche and out of fallen human nature, because the large language model that's all across the internet is reflecting all of the things that we put into it and train it to do. So that's a long and meandering way to say that I agree with all this, and what the church, in my opinion, ought to do now is double down on the gospel, the meaning of the human person, because humans are sacramental. And ultimately, it'll be pretty tough for AI or even a robot that has a Dan Schreck large language model to have that sacramental reality. And I think that's the problem that you're seeing now, is that humans, and you're seeing this in young humans who are 15, 16, 17 years old, who have only lived this kind of digital life, don't know the analog experiences, but they still want them. So that's a lot of things. I think the way I maybe sum that up is that, and same thing with universities that you have as well, is that education now today, I think, isn't just about reading, writing, and arithmetic, but about reminding these young students who they are as human people, so that they are the ones to go back out and reorient science, technology, and all these other things that are happening in an upturned world towards the good of the human person. And I think, yeah, universities have pride of place in that regard.
Thank you for that. One of the points that you touched on, Daniel, reminds me another point that you, Father Baggett, pointed out, which is this relationship with our technology and what we create. It's an interesting thing to discern relationship, especially with this type of creation. At what point does technology serve humanity, and what point does humanity become subservient to that technology? And one of the most important things that you mentioned, Father Baggett, was it's not meant to replace real human encounter, especially as we pursue creating a culture of encounter. What's interesting is technology is naturally oriented around maximizing efficiency. And what we know about humanity, ultimately what it means to cultivate the heart, it is not efficient. We look about empathy, being present with suffering. Those are some of the most inefficient things. And so these are kind of opposing, competing ideals with our relationship with technology, again, naturally oriented around efficiency, and maybe incomplete because absent of, again, these values that are reflected in our humanity. But I wonder, what is the way to reconcile that? And again, knowing that technology has this drive to maximize efficiency, but to be human, to be ultimately in the asset of humanity, is not to be efficient, but to again create encounter, and this is ultimately community. I'm reminded again during the pandemic when we somewhat became fully subservient to technology. We thought replacing human encounter, we could do that over Zoom. This was a really great representation of us relying solely, completely on technology, and we realized that it was never enough. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, how do we reconcile these two opposing orientations of humanity, technology, our relationship with that, and ultimately, how do we get humanity, again, integral in it, at the center of technology design? Maybe, Father Eric, could I start with you, and then we'll go around?
I can start just by a few words. First of all, I don't believe, for now, I mean, with the state of the art, that we will have an AGI or a sentient AI, and the danger for me doesn't come from the AI or the technology. The danger comes from the human being. I mean, it's never a technology that makes someone obsolete. It's someone who's decided that someone else is obsolete because the technology does something faster or cheaper or whatever. So, I mean, this is more our human nature of being capable of being like God, but also being sinners, that has to be questioned. And everything happens here. And not only in the mind of those people designing those technologies, obviously they have a deep responsibility, but most of those technologies, especially large language models, they are general purpose AI. So it's less an ethics of the technology than an ethics of the use case. And it's a lot about how we use it. I mean, just remember the story of the golden calf. I mean, the goldsmiths did not make an idol. They just made a sculpture out of gold. But the people empowered this sculpture with something which was toxic and made it an idol. And this is something that each of us can do or not do depending the way we interact. And I think that in our society, which wants to be extremely scientific, extremely technologic, and tries to remove spirituality, let's say, push that back only in the personal sphere. I mean, it's you in your mind, in your spirit, in your soul. I mean, this is something that pops out again. You mentioned, Father Michael, the movie Her. I mean, this is typically what we can get. It's when spirituality comes in and at some point transforms a little bit the interaction we have with technology. I mean, any kind of technology at some point, if it's powerful enough, looks a little bit magic. And we could be fascinated by this technology, all of us, let's be honest. I mean, just check the relationship we have with our smartphones, our tablets, and so on, and how many people, for example, talk to ChatGPT saying please and thank you and so on. I mean, and they are interacting like being in interaction with a human being. So, I mean, all of that has to be taken in consideration. And I would say that for me, the key in terms of ethics and human dignity is in this question of the future of work. So how will it be used, and which will be the place of the humanity? Are we creating a society for the humans, or are we also creating a society for the humans, but by the humans? So it means that everybody has to contribute. And this is something we need to fight for.
Thank you for that. Would anyone on the panel like to respond immediately to that?
Yeah. So I will slightly contest the premise of the question to begin with. So I think that there's like a tension that appears in the way that this question is, that it's like there's somehow a tension between efficiency and virtue. But work, particularly if it is a part of your vocation, can be very sanctifying and can lead you to lots of great virtues in all of the different parts of your life. So I do really think that there is a subset of the population, one that Catholic Tech really hopes to serve, who have God-given talents in the sciences and engineering and things like that, that God has given to them so that they can participate in building his creation. That's something that Bishop Kennedy, our president, always says, that humans are called to be co-creators in God's creation. And sometimes that involves technology, sometimes that involves building efficiencies. But I think seeing these things as being distinct, the kind of philosophical, theological virtues and the work that you can do in AI and science and engineering and the good that you can do with that, I think is a mindset that is a bit destructive to our ability to go out into the world and evangelize these spaces, especially because so many people who identify as scientists and engineers, that's such a strong part of their identity. It's almost as strong a part of their identity as being Catholics is to our identity. So I think not drawing that separation so harshly and showing the commonalities between the truth that we know from Revelation and the truths that we discover and build upon using human reason is a very important thing for us to think about as we evangelize.
Yeah, I think there's an inherent anti-fragility in humans. When I was a young kid, I used to watch Star Trek. I don't know if anyone watched Star Trek. And in the Star Trek, I don't know what season it was, I was a young kid, and there was the Borg. And the Borg in some ways represented an assimilation of technology, whereby, in this case, Jean-Luc Picard and any other human or creature become part of this collective. And while there's an efficiency to technology, there's also an inherent fragility to it. There's a lot of dystopian movies about this too. Contrast that to the mechanism of the gospel. And the mechanism of the gospel is inherently anti-fragile, because the mechanism that our Lord chose was not technology, but instead friendship. Friendship. It didn't matter how many disciples, apostles, and adherents to our Lord you killed in Rome 2,000 years ago. The faith continued to propagate based on the durability and trust formed around friendship. And I think there is actually a pretty strict dichotomy ideologically between technology, which can become Borg-like and is very fragile, and that which is based in friendship. And I think to kind of underpin what I said in the beginning, it's to remind the human person once again who they are. They're not part of the Borg. They're part of this. There's a program inside of them, and that program isn't an artificial soul. The program was there from the beginning so that we can propagate truth through friendship. Now, friendship isn't as sexy as something like, AI and ChatGPT 5 that's coming out that's going to be super incredible. But it is that inherent program in us, I think, that is the great antithesis to technology, which can make us like the Borg, undifferentiated, sullen, and unhappy.
Thank you for that, Daniel. And Taylor, I want to go to you because, pulling on that thread, I think we've had this interesting discussion. Alexis, you point out a really important, I think, point, which is there's a lot of potential and promise to technology, especially one that is deeply rooted to reflect these human values, especially through the inspiration of the church. Absent of that, I'm reminded of Jacques Ellul's relationship between technology and technique, right? And so Father Ruiz talks about, technology is not naturally neutral. It's reflective of our values and what we stand behind. And if technology, absent of faith, absent of humanity, it's left with just maximizing efficiency, right? And so that builds a case for faith and for the church's role in this. So with that, Taylor, I know that you're working within a big mover when it comes to industry and artificial intelligence. And, it's easy when industry incentivizes you to get to market fast, first, iterate really quickly. How does one grapple with that? And again, ensure that it's reflective of humanity and these humanistic elements are at the core of its design, development, and use?
Yeah, I think that it really depends on a richer understanding of the human person. In fact, all of us don't like efficiency in certain places, right? We go for a walk, or we run, or we lift weights in order to have artificially grow our own physicality and be a healthier, better person. We go to school and deal with hard problems rather than carry around something in our pocket that just answers them, right? We all throughout our lives, in fact, we seek out things that are difficult and hard and not efficient so that we ourselves can be enriched as a human person as part of that. In building AI products at Microsoft, we're encountering much the same thing when working with our users. It's not that they want often the simple answer, because they don't know where they got it from. You know, they want to understand, like, wait a second, this unrestricted desire to know within me isn't satisfied just by the printout of this black box. I want to know how it got to that. A lot of our responsible AI practices, in fact, are driven off of this fact where the user has to trust it. And trust is a very interesting thing, right, from a cognitional standpoint. We know people we trust, we know people we don't trust. And we differentiate information differently from those different sources. And AI is very much the same. So in some ways I kind of push back against the efficiency side of things. And while tech can be that, I think we're seeing a lot of places where the efficient ends up impoverishing our own lifestyle, even if we think of it from a secular standpoint. And it's actually these inefficiencies, these intentional ways of interacting with technology that make it harder for me, but I'm better at the end of it, even if it means I'm just a little more swole or something. That we're starting to see those analogs. Like, no, actually, don't give me the answer, ChatGPT. Help me come up with better questions. I want to understand this more.
Yeah. I guess I think that this is kind of like one of the, I don't disagree with you in principle, but I think this is kind of like one of the core tensions that the church is facing right now in trying to get back to the position that it once held as, the leaders in the sciences and engineering and things like that. There is value to kind of like not taking these shortcuts and being very meticulous in the way that you go through and solve problems, but that's not an efficient way to do it. And there is a necessity for efficiency if we are going to progress to the cutting edge as fast as our peers are. So I think often what's going to happen is when we try to kind of tie ourselves to this process where we're working through things at that pace, kind of step by step, that's one of the places where we get left behind. So I think both of these things have value, but I don't think that we're going to be able to be seen as peers to these other secular institutions if we don't utilize all of the tools that are available to us to the greatest extent possible. We had a faculty meeting a couple of months ago at Catholic Tech, where we came to a collective decision that we were not going to prohibit our students from using generative AI on any assignment that they had in the humanities, in math and science and things like that, because it's a tool that's going to be at their disposal. It's a tool that their peers out in the field are going to have, and I think in order for them to become the best and brightest scientists and engineers, which is where we believe they have to be in order to really evangelize, that's the reality of the situation, I think.
Yeah, first of all, I would say that I would not prohibit, but I would even encourage scholars and students to use this kind of technology. Currently, everybody can have a research assistant if they use that in the proper way, which is great. Before, you needed to be full professor to have assistants. Now everybody can do, so that's absolutely great. And just to build on what you're saying, because we had the fascinating conversations with Kevin Scott on this topic, that the danger for me is that all those programs are designed to comfort us. So they go in our way, and yeah, I'm looking forward to get an AI which challenges us. Is it the right question I mean, remember, it was Jimmy and I, but someone asked the question, how many stones can you eat a day? And they say no more than 3 or 4. And I mean, the question is stupid. It's not the answer. So let's question the question. So that's my first point. The second one is I would never oppose efficiency, I would say, and human flourishing, because both have to be combined, as I would never oppose profitability and ethics. Because if you're ethical but not profitable, you're not ethical for a long time. But if you're only profitable and not ethical, who are you? I mean, so we need to find a way to align the planets. And this is a thin line. This is not easy, but this is the only way to my mind. But for that, and that's my third point, we also need to try to make a kind of paradigm shift or change the ethical software, because engaging a lot with C-level in the valley, I see that, I mean, they have an ethics, but most of the time it's very consequentialist. It even goes to long-termism, so like seeing humanity as a full body, and if you just save thousands of them, you save humanity, which is absolutely not our point of view in the Catholic Church. But slightly move from that, I remember the first meetings we came with something a little bit more like, continental ethics, so having principles, and they say, but what's the point? I mean, if it works, I mean, if it's legal, I can do it. And so we moved slightly from that to trying to go to an ethics of virtues, or probably, I'm a Dominican, so I'm biased in a Thomistic way. But I think that at the end, we can put some drops of this ethics of virtue in the process of reflection, and that changes completely the way to deal with the ethics of technology.
Thank you for that. Just being conscious of time, I want to maybe pose one more question. I'm excited that we're going to be leading a workshop tomorrow because I'm very interested in some of the points you're talking about, where translating a lot of these inspirations into the technical principles that could, again, practically maximize the practical adoption, especially for a corporation that has instrumental motivations as well as intrinsic. So excited to further deepen that. But at least from the perspective of the church, especially in the digital age, what's interesting here is we recognize this type of discussion cannot be isolated just to a handful of developers, but it must be reflective of the human family. So the type of multilateral stakeholders involved, from industry to technologists to academia, et cetera, very diverse, and participants even outside of the faith. So I want to maybe pose a question about what does this mean for the church as a form of evangelization? We're encountering people of diverse lived experience, contribution to this, and to walk a process of co-creation with them is one that's very much necessary. I'm reminded of Evangelii Gaudium that talks about a new way of evangelizing, really talking about it enriches the evangelizer as much as it does the evangelized. And what does that mean for the church to enrich it in its process of evangelizing in forums like this, meeting people in industry around the world, inviting their participation? So I'd love to maybe pose a question of, what does that look like in a new world of evangelization, knowing that this type of co-creation is very much needed to represent the human family? Daniel.
I was listening to a Jordan Peterson podcast the other day, and he said something about the inherent logic of philosophy. And I think by extension, you could take this to the program of the gospel as well. In America, we have this word wokeness, and the issue with wokeness is it's inherently illogical. And, it's the saying that you can pick your own actions, but not your consequences, right? And so I think what we'll find is, I feel bad for the Dominicans, but you can imagine a world in maybe 4 or 5 years where we not only have an AI theologian who can synthesize all that the church has said and the great philosophers like Aristotle, but can also begin to theorize practical truths to us because of the inherent consistency and nature of the gospel and the anthropology of the human person. That's not true with anthropological dualism. It can live in your imagination, but I wonder what will happen in a system which needs logic in order for it to exist. And you can, in conclusion, think of the next priest, 10 years from now that isn't going to Catholic Answers, but finds this inherent logic inside of a computer system. So that should bring efficiency to how we evangelize. But I think, as always, this is kind of my major point, and I think yours as well, is to bring this back to the programming of the person, which is one based on sacramentality, friendship, and a relational aspect. As C.S. Lewis talked about this, that in the future, in the past, you had hills of good and bad. He was talking about Merlin in his space trilogy. But in the future, you'll have these two needles of good and bad. And I think that's kind of the era that we're approaching, where people aren't dumb. They're going to see that something inside of them, which is naturally analog, is only being expressed outwardly through these digital relationships. So I think actually this could be a golden era of evangelism, because people so desperately want to know who they are, and will have the tools with the inherent logic to articulate it to them.
Thank you so much. Would any of the other panelists like to follow that thread and speak to the future of evangelization for the church?
Sure. So we obviously believe that one of the biggest frontiers in which we need to do evangelization is in the field of science and technology. It's become increasingly hostile over time to people who practice their faith. You get comments that, oh, how can you believe in the Catholic faith if you believe in science or technology? And that's something that we are very much focused on trying to do. I think one of the things that is very important when we think about artificial intelligence and what it can and cannot reasonably do is it can't pursue truth in the way that we are oriented to pursue truth. So I feel like that's a very unifying kind of statement to make to both scientists and philosophers and theologians. We are all searching for, through our research and our lives, this kind of unifying truth. And everyone can agree that that's what we're looking for in life, even if they don't understand where truth comes from. And Bishop Kennedy always mentions the dynamism of the human person. And, it's what God gave us when he created us. And a lot of that dynamism is our ability to know God by pursuing his truth, understanding the work of his creation, and, going out and using those gifts and our intellect in order to be able to grow closer to him. So I think that that's a message that we have been successful in sharing with very secular type people. It's one that makes sense to people. And I think a universal pursuit of truth is a unifying thing that many people from all backgrounds can get behind.
I know we're 1 minute. Father Eric, would you like to make one more statement? Along the way, it looked like your hand was on the button.
Just on this point, but very briefly, for me, the question is, what's evangelization? Is it like getting new faithful only, or providing the gospel to the entire world? Meaning providing a spirit more than a law, and helping people. I have a rule when I'm invited by a government, a large company, to speak about ethics or governance of technology. I never speak about God. And God always invites himself in the conversation. So, but it comes from the point of view of the people, so it comes from the questions they have instead of what I want to pass as a message. And this is a very different way to do. And for me, the key point is to help them to frame the questions. So many people, probably they are against us in terms of religion, but they have also their own spirituality, which cannot express itself because they don't have the vocabulary, they are not in the right position for that, and so on. And so we need to be patient and to light the path for them and to accompany them. And at some point, they discover how profound it can be and how rich the gospel can be.
Great, thank you so very much for that. I know we're exactly at time, so I'll appreciate the punctuality of our panelists. But I want to thank our panelists for this enriching conversation. So maybe we can give them a round of applause. Appreciate them. And then, Matthew, I'll turn it back to you to maybe release us for break.
Thank you, everyone. So we'll take a coffee break and back in here at 11:15. Thank you very much.